The confrontation did not begin with shouting. It began with a locked archive room, a restricted request bearing Prince Harry's name, and one discovery that instantly pulled Diana back into the center of a fractured royal family. By the time William learned what his brother had tried to access, the question was no longer why Harry wanted the files. It was what he believed was hidden inside them, and what William feared would happen if they were ever opened. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. William received the warning in private and froze. The sealed estate files, private records preserved under strict access conditions, including correspondence, instructions, and family matters, had remained beyond casual reach for years. Harry had submitted a request through a private archival channel, meaning a controlled records process used to seek permission for restricted material. He had not spoken to his brother first. The request had been stopped only at the authorization stage. William read the documented access notification twice. The prince placed the page flat on the table and asked the archive administrator one question. Did he see anything? The administrator answered through a recorded confirmation that no sealed material had been released. Harry had been blocked before access was granted. Relief should have followed. It did not. But the absence of access did absolutely nothing to soften the betrayal. William understood why this cut so deeply. Diana was not merely a royal name preserved in history. She was their mother, and the files represented a private boundary the brothers had never openly agreed to cross. William had spent years believing some parts of her life should remain untouched because they belonged to her. Harry's decision felt like a breach of that understanding. Then the detail that changed everything emerged. Harry had not asked for random papers. His request identified a specific category of sealed material, linked to decisions made during the final years of Diana's life. That meant someone had told him enough to know exactly what existed and where to look. William's anger sharpened into something colder: fear. The prince left the notification behind and walked out before his aides could follow. He ordered that Harry be contacted directly. Before the confrontation, William learned one more thing. His brother's interest had begun weeks earlier, after Diana's name surfaced during a private disagreement between them. To understand why one blocked request could push two brothers toward their most personal confrontation in years, the story has to return to the one bond they once believed no royal feud could destroy: their shared memory of Diana. Long before palaces, interviews, foundations, and public accusations divided them, William and Harry shared one grief that belonged to no institution. Diana was their mother before she became anyone else's memory. Yet time did not preserve that grief equally. One son learned to protect what remained private. The other kept searching for explanations. And when Harry began looking towards sealed material from Diana's estate, those two ways of surviving the same loss finally collided. William carried his mother's legacy like something fragile. The prince believed certain memories, letters, and family decisions should remain beyond public arguments, because privacy was one of the few things Diana could no longer defend for herself. Her estate, meaning the personal property, records, and instructions left under controlled handling after her death, mattered because it contained more than history. To him, it contained pieces of a mother whose life had already been examined too often. Harry carried the same loss differently. He had spent years asking how Diana had been treated, what royal life had cost her, and how those experiences shaped his own choices after stepping away from senior royal duties. During a private conversation weeks before the archive incident, he looked directly at William and said, "There are parts of Mum's story we were never given." William's face changed at once. He did not hear grief. He heard suspicion. The prince answered carefully that Diana should not become evidence in arguments between her sons. Harry recoiled at the idea. To him, William sounded less like a brother and more like a gatekeeper deciding which parts of their mother belonged to whom. He then revealed, during that same recorded family conversation, that he had become convinced Diana left private instructions about how certain personal records should be handled once both sons were adults. William refused to say whether such instructions existed, the silence landed harder than denial. Harry pushed his chair back and asked whether his brother had ever been allowed to see material that he had not. The future king hesitated, just for a moment, but that pause fed every doubt Harry had brought into the room, and neither brother understood how costly that brief hesitation would soon become. The argument could still have ended there. Instead, a private anniversary meeting days later changed everything. During a discussion honoring one of Diana's charitable milestones, Harry heard a former estate advisor refer to a sealed instruction bearing her initials. William reacted immediately, cutting the subject short, and Harry noticed. That single reference became his point of no return. Because once he believed a hidden instruction truly existed, curiosity hardened into determination, and determination led him straight toward the sealed archive. Harry did not wake up one morning and suddenly decide to challenge the boundaries around Diana's estate. The decision began with a sentence spoken quietly during what should have been a reflective family occasion. It lasted only seconds. No announcement followed. No explanation was offered. But Harry heard enough to believe that something his mother had deliberately protected was still being kept beyond his reach. From that moment, the sealed files stopped being history. They became unfinished business. Harry entered the private anniversary gathering, carrying doubts he had not shared. The family had come together to mark one of Diana's charitable milestones, a moment meant to honor her work and consider how the next generation should protect that legacy. William wanted the discussion kept narrow. The prince knew how quickly remembrance could become argument, especially when private history was pulled into present-day wounds. Then one sentence changed the room. An elderly former estate advisor, speaking during a documented discussion, referred to a sealed instruction bearing Diana's initials that had been placed under restricted handling after her death. Restricted handling meant material could not be opened because a relative requested it. Access depended on conditions attached to the record itself. William looked toward the advisor. The man stopped immediately. Harry noticed both reactions. Harry asked what the phrase meant. William cut in and said the matter was not appropriate for that conversation. The response hit hard. Harry was sitting in a room devoted to their mother, yet he felt shut out of her story. Later, with no aides present, he confronted his brother and said being protected from painful information as a child did not justify withholding it from him as an adult. William answered that adulthood did not erase Diana's right to privacy. Harry could not let it go. In the days that followed, he traced the reference through estate records and learned that several materials remained sealed under access conditions neither son could simply override. Then he found the detail that transformed suspicion into urgency. One restricted grouping from Diana's final years appeared to concern family guidance, not money or property. That difference mattered. Financial records could explain assets. Family guidance could contain wishes meant specifically for her sons. Harry wrote the archive reference number by hand. He folded the paper once and slipped it into his jacket instead of photographing it. The choice was deliberate. He intended to pursue the matter quietly, without warning William. Then he submitted the request. The next conversation would no longer be about what Diana might have written. It would be about whether Harry had crossed a line his brother believed should never have been approached at all. When William finally stood across from Harry, there were no microphones, advisors, or carefully rehearsed statements between them. Only two brothers, one blocked request, and the name neither could speak without carrying decades of grief into the room. William did not ask whether Harry had tried to reach the files. He already knew. Instead, he asked why his brother had done it secretly. Harry's answer transformed the confrontation from an argument over protocol into something painfully personal. William had arranged the meeting the moment confirmation arrived that the request was stopped. He ordered every aide outside and kept the conversation private. The access notice, meaning the formal record showing that a request for restricted material had been made and halted, lay between them. Harry knew exactly why he had been called in, yet he refused to describe his attempt as wrongdoing, because Diana's final private instructions felt personal to both sons, not institutional property. William closed the door and placed the notice flat on the table. You went looking behind my back." Harry did not flinch. "Hi, I am Hadi, and I am your voice." The prince's anger sharpened instantly. He accused his brother of turning Diana into another battleground in a feud that had already consumed too much of their lives. Harry fired back that refusing access was how families allowed other people to control a dead woman's story. Harry then revealed, during that private conversation, what he had actually wanted. He was not seeking every sealed estate file. He wanted one restricted instruction concerning how Diana wished her sons to handle parts of her private legacy once they were adults. William stared at him before admitting something Harry had never expected. He knew the instruction existed, but he had never opened it either. Harry's anger faltered. For years, suspicion had told him that William possessed answers being denied to him. Now that belief collapsed. The future king was not guarding a secret from his brother. He was guarding the seal itself. William said their mother's boundaries mattered, even if the contents could answer questions both men had carried for decades. Harry answered quietly that unanswered questions could wound people too. Then another truth emerged. Neither brother could simply order the instruction opened. The seal was controlled under separate custodial conditions, rules governing who may authorize access to protected records, and royal rank alone could not override them. That discovery changed the confrontation, because anger was suddenly competing with helplessness itself. For the first time, their argument hit a wall neither man had built. Diana's sons stood at the center of the mystery, yet neither controlled its answer, and whoever did would now become the next source of conflict. Royal titles suddenly meant very little. Being the future king could not give William automatic access, and being Diana's younger son could not give Harry the right to break the conditions she left behind. The file was protected by something stronger than family expectation, a restriction designed to survive emotion, rank, and pressure. As the brothers learned who actually controlled the decision, their anger shifted toward an uncomfortable possibility. Diana herself had intended this barrier. William listened as the rules were explained and realized there was no royal shortcut. Sealed personal estate material, meaning private records preserved under conditions set when they were deposited, remained subject to custodial responsibility rather than family rank. The custodians were the people legally charged with protecting those conditions. Harry could not force access because he was Diana's son, and the prince could not release anything simply because he might one day become king. Charles received a documented summary of the confrontation. The king read it alone, removed his glasses, and placed them beside the page before giving one instruction. No one was to pressure the custodians in his name. He understood that intervening would turn a private family dispute into an exercise of royal influence. William heard about his father's decision and accepted it. Harry heard the same message and felt another door closing. Harry's frustration now moved beyond his brother. To him, another institution was deciding when he could confront his own family history. William felt something different: fear. If Diana had deliberately created this restriction, then opening the file before its conditions were satisfied would not be an act of discovery. It would be crossing a boundary their mother had chosen. Then the custodial note changed everything. During a recorded briefing, the brothers were told that the sealed instruction carried a release condition based on mutual consent from Diana's sons, together with confirmation that the material would remain private. Mutual consent meant both brothers had to agree. Neither could act alone. Harry had never possessed the power to open it by himself, but William could not permanently stop access either if they eventually agreed. William looked directly at Harry when those words were repeated. The room changed. What had seemed like a fight over control was suddenly something more painful, a decision that required trust between two men who had almost none left. Harry understood the consequence. The failed request now triggered tighter protective procedures around the archive, and Harry would feel those changes first. The restriction had answered who held the power, but it had not healed the breach. Instead, he now had to face what his secret attempt had cost him in the eyes of his brother. The punishment was not dramatic. No title vanished. No public decree was issued. Yet Harry felt the consequences almost immediately. Access procedures surrounding Diana's private material were tightened. Conversations that once included him became cautious, and William stopped speaking about the file altogether. For Harry, the silence was worse than anger. He had gone searching because he believed something had been withheld from him. Now his attempt had created the very distance he had feared was already there. Harry received the confirmation alone. His request had been permanently closed, and the custodians had strengthened the access process around Diana's sealed estate material, so no future approach could be mistaken for informal family approval. Custodians were the people responsible for protecting restricted records under the conditions attached to them, and those safeguards now carried even more weight. He lowered his phone and remained seated, saying nothing. The decision felt less like procedure and more like rejection, sharp and deeply personal to him. William agreed with the new precautions, but not as punishment. The prince wanted no chance that rank, pressure, or family emotion could influence the archive. Harry knew that. Yet the knowledge did not soften the blow. In a private conversation later that day, he admitted he had assumed his brother had already seen the sealed instruction. Discovering that William had resisted opening it forced him to confront an unsettling possibility. Perhaps he had misjudged the entire situation. William was shaken too. He told Catherine privately that Harry's attempt frightened him because it suggested their shared grief had become something they could no longer manage together. She listened, then asked one simple question. If Diana had required mutual consent, could the restriction itself have been designed to force her sons to speak directly, rather than allowing either one to act alone? William dismissed the thought at first. Then he returned to the custodial wording and read it again. Mutual consent meant both brothers had to agree before access could be granted, and the condition was unusually personal. The file could not be opened through rank, inheritance, or pressure. It could only be opened through agreement. Late that evening, William took out the copy of the restriction and circled the words, "Joint written consent." He held the pen above the page, then stopped. Signing anything now would answer the wrong question. Instead, the future king contacted Harry and asked to meet again, this time with no archive request, no advisors, and no argument prepared. The first meeting had been about the seal. The second would be about why two brothers had reached a point where they needed a document to force them into the same room. The second meeting began differently. William brought no paperwork. Harry brought no demand. There were no aides waiting for an answer, because for once, the sealed file was not the real subject. Diana was. After years of speaking about their mother through memories, interviews, institutions, and arguments, the brothers finally faced a truth no archive could solve. They had spent years protecting themselves from grief in completely opposite ways. William had asked his brother to meet privately, with no estate representatives present and no decision expected that day. Estate representatives were the people responsible for administering and protecting Diana's private records under the conditions attached to them. The prince made one thing clear from the beginning: nothing would be opened, signed, or authorized. Harry accepted that. Every procedural route had already failed. If anything changed now, it would have to begin between brothers, not through paperwork. Harry spoke first. During that private conversation, he admitted that he had pursued the file because he feared there might be something Diana wanted him to know, something other people had decided he was better off never seeing. William listened without interrupting. Then, the future king admitted that his fear was the exact opposite. He worried that opening every surviving piece of their mother's private life would eventually leave nothing that belonged only to her. Harry lowered his voice. He said he should have gone to William before submitting the request. No excuse followed. No accusation softened the admission. For the first time, he acknowledged that secrecy itself had been the betrayal, regardless of why he wanted the file. William did not celebrate the apology. He answered with one of his own truths. He had wondered about the sealed instruction for years. William revealed in that same private exchange that he had never avoided the instruction because he knew what it contained. He avoided it because he feared both brothers wanted Diana to settle arguments she could no longer answer herself. That possibility cut through Harry's anger. Their mother had become a place each man went searching for certainty, but certainty was exactly what she could no longer give them. The prince placed a blank sheet of paper between them. It was not an authorization. It was a promise that neither brother would seek access again without first speaking directly to the other. Harry signed first. William followed. The agreement did not repair everything. It did something smaller, and perhaps more important. It created one boundary around Diana that both sons chose together. For the first time in years, they left a room carrying less anger than they had brought into it. But outside those walls, the blocked request was about to become public, and Britain was about to choose sides. By morning, a private family wound had become a public spectacle. Headlines reduced the confrontation to familiar camps. William the Protector, Harry the Rebel, Diana once again placed between her sons. Yet the loudest interpretation was not the most important one. Behind closed doors, the brothers had already made a decision the public did not know about. They would not open the sealed instruction merely to satisfy suspicion, pressure, or curiosity. And that choice changed the meaning of the entire scandal. William saw the first front page over breakfast and went completely still. One major London newspaper carried photographs of both brothers beneath the headline, "Diana's Last Secret, Brothers at War Over Sealed File." Outside Kensington Palace, the royal residence long associated with Diana and her sons, copies were lifted toward gathering cameras as debates spread across broadcasts and breakfast tables. The prince stared at his mother's photograph between them, then folded the paper inward until her face disappeared. Harry reacted with anger. He believed the story had transformed his search for understanding into an attempt to expose Diana. The Duke considered issuing a personal response, but before anything was released, he spoke privately with William. Palace officials, meanwhile, refused to discuss either the contents or the conditions attached to the sealed material. That restraint mattered because any detailed official response could turn speculation into a royal position and drag their mother's private life deeper into public combat. William urged silence, but not surrender. The brothers approved the same narrow statement through a documented palace communication. Diana's private estate material would remain sealed, and neither son would seek unilateral access. Unilateral access meant one brother trying to obtain the material without the other's agreement. Harry accepted the wording. The prince did too. For the first time since the crisis began, they were not publicly answering one another. They were answering together. Outside Kensington Palace, flowers began appearing beside photographs of Diana. Among them sat one handwritten card carrying a simple sentence: "Some things belong to her, not to us." That message cut through the noise because it captured what neither headline had understood. The real story was no longer about who could force the file open. It was about whether either son should. Harry knew the pressure would not disappear. William knew curiosity would only grow. Yet both men still faced one final decision together: whether Diana's mysterious instruction should ever be opened at all. The world wanted the secret inside the file, but the final verdict would come from two sons, deciding whether love meant reading her last protected words or respecting her silence. In the end, there is no dramatic tearing of an envelope, no hidden confession read aloud, and no final revelation capable of rewriting royal history. The greatest twist is that William and Harry decide they do not need one. After years of grief, suspicion, anger, and public expectation shaping their relationship with Diana's memory, both brothers choose the one thing neither could accomplish alone: restraint. The sealed file remains closed, not because its contents are feared, but because its boundary is finally understood. William and Harry inform the custodians that neither will provide the mutual consent required to open Diana's sealed instruction. Custodians are the people responsible for protecting restricted records under the conditions attached to them, while mutual consent means both sons must agree before access can be granted. The brothers do not destroy the file or change its future status. They decide that curiosity, conflict, and public pressure are not enough to overrule their mother's privacy. Harry admits during their final conversation that his secret attempt came from unresolved fear. He had convinced himself that Diana might have left something he needed to understand himself. William listens, then offers an admission of his own. The prince says protecting privacy can become avoidance if it stops two people from speaking honestly. He agrees that their mother's memory must never again become a reason for silence between them. William signs the formal refusal first. He passes the pen across the table, and Harry signs beneath him. Neither brother speaks until the document is taken away. The refusal, meaning an official written decision not to authorize access, closes this battle without erasing the file itself. More importantly, it reveals the sealed instructions' real power. Its requirement for agreement forced Diana's sons to confront one another instead of fighting through institutions. Harry leaves, knowing William had never deliberately excluded him. The future king leaves with the boundary he fought to protect intact. Their larger differences remain, but this conflict reaches a real end. For the monarchy, the message is clear. Royal rank does not automatically create personal entitlement, and Diana's private legacy cannot be claimed simply because the demand comes from inside the family. Harry crossed a line when he tried to reach the files alone. William confronted him because that line mattered. But neither brother wins by defeating the other. They finally accept that Diana belonged first to herself. The file stays sealed, the conflict closes, and her sons honor their mother not by exposing another secret, but by allowing her to keep one. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.